Welcome to GeneralMind. Today our topic is about the Earth.
Why don't we fall off the Earth? The Earth is a sphere. Shouldn't we all be flung into space if it wasn't for gravity? Well, yes, actually we should. But sometimes they're about things that are really close to us. It's like our own planet Earth. And this video is about something that we experience every single day, but maybe we don't think about very often. Gravity. But there's a simple explanation for why we don't. But why does it do that? Well, the simple answer is because the Earth is a big, massive object, and everything that has mass attracts everything else with some gravitational force. You wouldn't be able to jump high enough to escape the Earth's gravitational pull and get sucked into space. You would fall off the Earth because the Earth's gravity isn't strong enough to hold you there. But it's not strong enough to stop us from falling off the edge of the planet. And that's all due to the shape of the Earth. The Earth is a bit wider at the equator than it is tall from pole to pole. This means that if you stand on the equator, you're further away from the center of the Earth than if you were standing at either pole. Therefore, the Earth's gravity is weaker on you and can't hold you there. It's because the Earth has a very strong gravitational pull. In fact, if you could jump about 12 kilometers up in the air, you'd be able to escape the Earth's gravitational pull altogether. I hope you learned something new today. But unless you have a jetpack, you can't jump nearly that high. All the stuff in our everyday lives, like gravity, can seem really complicated and hard to understand. But if you break it down, it's not actually that difficult. I've got plenty more where that came from. And as always, thank you for watching. I hope that's what my videos show. So you'll always be brought back down to the surface of the Earth by its gravity. The more mass an object has, the stronger its gravitational pull. So the Earth's massive gravity pulls us towards it. I make videos about space. Sometimes those videos are about things that are so far away that they seem almost alien to us, like black holes or neutron stars. We all know that gravity pulls us down towards the ground and keeps our feet stuck on the floor instead of floating away. But this raises another question, which is why don't we get pulled towards other massive objects like the moon or the sun? Well, it's because the strength of gravity depends on the distance between objects as well as their masses. Because even though the moon's gravity is weaker than the Earth's gravity, it's still strong enough to pull on the oceans and make them bulge up a bit. In fact, technically speaking, the moon is the one that's really wobbling the Earth a little bit. It's not actually the Earth that's wobbling the moon. It's weaker the further away you are from an object. Well, it's because the Earth's gravity is strong enough to stop us from falling into space, but it's not strong enough to stop us from falling off the edge of the planet. And let me explain what I mean by that. This means that although the sun's gravity is thousands of times stronger than the Earth's gravity, we don't notice it because we're so far away from the sun. And although the moon's gravity is about 1/6 the strength of the Earth's gravity, we don't notice it because the moon is so much closer to us. The only time you might notice the moon's gravity is when the tides come in. Anyway, to get back to the original question, why don't we fall off the Earth if you were to jump up in the air? However, if you were to stand on the equator and lean over as far as you possibly could and then let go, so to answer the question of this video, we won't fall off the Earth because the Earth's gravity is strong enough to stop us from falling into space. And with that, we've answered yet another. Why don't we fall off the Earth? There are so many amazing things about our planet. If you did, please subscribe and check out my other videos. If you want to see more videos that break down complex topics into simple explanations, please subscribe. Did you know that ancient people knew that the Earth was round? And if so, how did they do it? Well, there are several ways they managed to figure out that our planet isn't flat. And we're going to tell you all about it right now. Well, first of all, it helps to know a little bit about what ancient people didn't know. They didn't know that the Earth was a sphere. They didn't know that it was made of rock and metal. They didn't even know that it revolved around the sun. They didn't think that the Earth was a perfect sphere like a ball. They knew that it wasn't as simple as that. In fact, they had a much more sophisticated understanding of the shape of the Earth. They knew that it was round like a ball, but it had a flat part where people lived, and animals roamed, and mountains formed a circle around that flat part. They also knew that there was water on the top of the mountains, so it sort of formed this dome over the Earth. But they did know that the Earth was round. How do we know this? Because they left us pictures of it. There's evidence that goes back to the 7th century BC. They didn't have any fancy tools like satellites or telescopes, but they were still able to figure it out just by looking around them. So next time someone tries to tell you that the earth is flat, just remember that you're smarter than the average ancient person. Around that time, the Greek poet Homer described the earth as being round like a ball. And he wasn't the only one. The philosopher Anaxagoras also argued that the earth was round, and he was actually put on trial for saying that. The Athenian authorities did and want their citizens to believe that the earth was round because it went against their religious beliefs. They believed that the earth was flat, and they were afraid that if people believed otherwise, it would cause chaos. There are many examples of this type of map, but one of the most famous is the T-shaped map of the world, which dates back to around 7000 BC. It's a clay tablet from ancient Mesopotamia that depicts the world as a flat rectangle surrounded by mountains. The Greeks were the first people to really study the shape of the earth. They knew that the earth was a sphere, and they even calculated its circumference pretty accurately. They also developed the first known globe, which was made by a Greek astronomer named Anaximander. Around 500 BC, the tablet is so detailed that it even shows the Mediterranean Sea and the Nile River. People have always wanted to understand their place in the universe. Well, it's likely that they used a combination of observation and deduction. First, they observed the shape of mountains and the curves of rivers. Then they deduced that the earth must be round. Some of them thought that it was flat, but most of them knew that it was round. Pythagoras, for example, argued that the earth was a sphere because it was the only way that it could be. If the earth were flat, there would be no way to explain why ships disappeared over the horizon, or why the stars changed as you traveled north or south. They also observed the stars and the planets and deduced that the earth couldn't be flat because if it were, the stars would look very different. These are two clay discs from ancient Mesopotamia that show a flat earth surrounded by mountains. The mountains form a circle because the earth is round. If the earth were flat, the mountains would look very different. They'd be arranged in straight lines or maybe a curve, but not a circle, as early humans looked up at the stars and traced their patterns. They also looked down at the ground and studied the shapes of mountains and the curves of rivers. By putting all of this information together, they were able to come up with some pretty sophisticated theories about how the world worked. Some of these theories were completely wrong, like the idea that the earth was made out of 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air. But some of them were surprisingly correct, like the fact that the earth is round. But how did they figure it out? Some of the earliest known examples of this are the Pazzi and Farrakhan discs, which date back to around 30 to 50 BC. Another piece of evidence that the ancient people knew that the earth was round comes from their religious beliefs. Many ancient religions had creation myths that explained how the world was made, and many of these myths describe the earth as being created from a sphere. For example, in the Babylonian myth, the god Marduk creates the earth by throwing a lump of clay into the sea. The lump of clay becomes a ball, which then expands into a disc. This disc is the earth. Of course, the ancient people weren't stupid. We know this because they left us pictures of it. So how did ancient people come up with this incredibly detailed map of the world? It's also possible that they learned something from the ancient Greeks. The ancient Greeks had a lot of ideas about the shape of the earth. In fact, the ancient Greeks knew that the earth was round long before Pythagoras. So yeah, ancient people definitely knew that the earth was round. Hey, don't forget to keep on thinking. It's the only way to make sure that we keep on living.